Hi! So let's talk today about our modern day diet. How did we get where we are today, so far from where our ancestors began? And is our diet today really the cause of so much disease and sickness that we experience? To know those things, we need to first look at how our ancestors ate. We know that our ancestors had very nutrient-rich diets. They ate various foods according to where they lived and what was in season. And if they were nomadic people, the types of food that they ate changed according to where they were. So location to location, they got different things. They couldn't just go to the store and get the same thing that they could get at the last place. So my ancestors probably ate very differently than your ancestors. Some ate more meat than plants, and others had more plants than meat. And on the same note, some of them had higher carbohydrate rich diets and less fats, and others had more fat content in their diet than they did carbohydrates. I don't think they were counting those macros back then though, do you? Everything they ate was seasonal, locally sourced, minimally processed, very nutrient rich, and no early diet was without any type of animal food. So what's happened since then to cause us to have such different diets that aren't so nutrient rich anymore? We're going to look at 6 nutritional milestones that have happened throughout history that have each had a huge impact on our food today. Okay, so why has our diet changed so much from how our ancestors ate? Here are the 6 nutritional milestones that changed how we eat today. The agricultural revolution, introduction of refined sugar, industrial revolution, rise of big food, the chemical revolution, and the digital revolution. First, we're going to start with the agricultural revolution. This was for the first time when people began growing and raising food in one place versus following and finding food whenever and wherever they could. They began to dwell in more permanent settlements and domesticate the animals, which resulted in food surpluses and then led to systemic division. There were many benefits of the agricultural revolution, but they came with a high cost as well. There were fewer and less diverse nutrients because they began to use the same soil over and over again. There was loss of bone density, habitat loss and soil degradation, increase in spread of communicable diseases, and the creation of societal hierarchies, inequality, slavery, and genocide. With that, the average carb intake per person significantly increased and the protein quality and intake decreased. Next up was the introduction of refined sugar. Sugar was first introduced in the 1600s, and at that point it was only a luxury item enjoyed by the wealthy. Consumption went from a few pounds per person per year to between 150 to 200 pounds per person per year today. So crazy. And we're not going to get into the effects that sugar can have on our body today, but we know it's not good. Next up was the Industrial Revolution. This really began to change how people lived, worked, and ate. They began to move from where their food was grown into the cities to work, and they had to buy their food. So the food that was sold had to be processed so that it would last longer. That resulted in a decrease in nutrient density. Also, machines began to replace humans and animals, and our physical work decreased. We got outside less, and we used our bodies for work a lot less at that point. Then came the rise of big food. So because of the Industrial Revolution and the need for more processed foods, now food companies were starting to show up. Many we still know today, like Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola, Nestle, Kellogg's. All of these companies started in the late 1800s to early 1900s. Some of them did begin with good intentions, but they are now mostly motivated by profits rather than creating a truly nourishing product. And because of the fortunes that they now have, they have such a huge influence over public policy and research, so they can keep us thinking that their products are good for us. Next up came the Chemical Revolution and World War II. This was a big one. Because there were soldiers all over the world, rations had to be created that were lighter and longer lasting. So things that we know today as like goldfish, granola bars, and juice pouches all came from military inventions during the war. Also, new foods like margarine and hydrogenated oils were also created at this time, and civilians had easier access to these so that the nutrient-rich foods like butter and meat could be fed to the troops. And many people never went back after the war to eating the butter and meat like they had previously because they were taught that the foods like margarine and hydrogenated oils were better for them. Also, chemical compounds that were originally used in making bombs and tear gas during this time were then repurposed later to use on fertilizers and pesticides on the farms back home. Sounds pretty crazy. Lastly, we have the digital revolution. This is known as the information age, and we know that this has had such a significant impact on the way we eat, move, sleep, work, and live. Our physical activity and how much we get outside has really decreased, and our posture is worse, which means we can't digest and absorb the nutrients our bodies need to the best of our ability. I know this is something I definitely have to work on. Blue light from our devices also affects the quality and quantity of our sleep, and the electromagnetic frequencies, or EMFs, from the devices all over our homes affect our bodies at a cellular level. So there you have it, the 6 major milestones that have significantly impacted our diets today and how we eat. And I'm not saying that these milestones are good or bad. A lot of good things have come from these too. And we don't want to go back to how our ancestors did everything. But it is important to understand how our food has significantly changed so that we can know how to better feed and nourish our bodies today.